Well, welcome everybody. We've got a good turnout here today. I see we have 31 participants on the meeting. It's 10 o'clock on the dot, so we'll go ahead and get started. Work sessions are an opportunity for board members to discuss issues informally with staff and invited guests. The board encourages members of the public to attend work sessions and listen to the discussion, but there is generally no opportunity for public comment. Members of the public wishing to address the board are welcome to do so during the board's regularly scheduled meetings held twice monthly. We have 5 items on the agenda today. I know that some of them are going to take a little bit of time. I do have a hard out at 10 minutes to 12, so hopefully we can move briskly through these and be able to terminate by that time. We'll start with the county manager update. I'll turn it over to our county manager, Don Boone.
Thank you, Chair Cuellar, members of the board. I'm actually going to defer my county manager update just so we have time to get through the rest of the agenda. And if there's any time at the very end, I can provide a few updates if that's okay, Chair Cuellar.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, county manager. We'll move on to the second item, which is the 2023-2024 budget meeting. This is on page 3. And I know we have the members of the budget committee or several members of the budget committee joining us. I will turn it over to our county manager, Don Boone.
Thank you, Chair Cuellar, members of the board and the budget committee. Thanks for joining us this morning. As you're aware, we are currently without a finance director, and so there's multitasking going on between Monica, assistant county manager, and myself as we work through this budget year. So I just want to say that up front, we're kind of working through the budget process, but we're a little bit understaffed right now. So I'm just going to have Monica go ahead and take over from here, and she'll go through a set of slides.
And can you hear me?
Yep, can now.
And I apologize because I'm trying to get my slideshow to work for you, and now I can't find where how I can get to my slideshow. Oh dear.
It was up there for a bit.
I know.
Here it is.
Okay. But that's not the one that I want you all to see, because I want you to be able to see the screen. But I can't get you all out of here. So I apologize because you're all going to have to look at my notes on the side, but I just want to kind of start off in regards to a recap of why we're here. So as you all know, we're looking to always strive to make improvements. And one of those improvements is that we're looking to do our best to keep our budget committee formed as we work through the budget process. And so we want to keep everybody up to date on what some of those financial trends and what the county's position are as we develop our budget. And we're starting to get into that budget process. This last week, we went before the board, and the Board of Commissioners adopted the 23-24 budget policies. And those are really what help drive the budget process, especially when we're talking about the discretionary revenues of the general fund. And so why is the focus on the general fund? The general fund, as we've said, houses the majority of the primary operations in the county, things such as public safety, clerk and elections, the internal programs such as the county manager's office, HR, IT, payroll, and so forth. And so being able to provide those ongoing services that are critical to county functions is our primary job, and being able to have those discretionary resources available to do so is important. So one of the major changes that we made for the 23-24 budget policies is specifically around the general fund reserves. And the language that the policies now contain is that the county will manage the general fund with the goal of maintaining the reserve within a range of 20 to 30% of budget expenditures, excluding contingency. And this is just a reminder as well that this is specific to the general fund. Every special fund has their own reserves as well, and we encourage those funds to also use this as a guideline, but this is specific for the general fund. The importance of those reserves, like we've talked about before, is there's always the need to be able to respond to fluctuations in revenues, whether that's because they're falling short or expenditures because they're coming in greater than anticipated due to unanticipated events. And so having those reserves available to us helps us maintain the stability in delivering all of the services that we spoke about earlier. It also helps when looking at credit ratings, such as when we went out for the jail bond. It helped us get an additional approximately $3.5 million because of our good credit rating. And it's just a tool to live within our means as well. We want to make sure that as the county grows, that we aren't growing outside of our means for that long-term stability. The other thing that we updated in the budget policies is just providing a little bit more clarification in regards to what those general fund reserves are. So we have what is called the Revenue Stabilization Fund. And while it sits outside of the general fund as its own special fund, it is specific to provide that financial stability to the general fund. And so, when we are looking at that 20 to 30% in our reserves, those funds in the stabilization fund are included, as well as unappropriated ending fund balance in the general fund. And what unappropriated ending fund balance is it's those funds that at the end of the year are unspent, either because there were savings realized or because they were not budgeted to be spent. And so oftentimes we, look for those savings throughout the fiscal year. And so those then roll into that fund balance that's available for the next year. So the reason why we're having these conversations is one, just because it's good fiscal responsibility, but also there's various things that continue to have impacts, whether it's because of revenues that are or aren't coming in, or because of expenditures that we're going to have to be facing. And so some of those revenues that we're watching closely are those timber revenues because of the HCP. We're also looking at the transient room tax and what flexibility the legislation might provide in order to be able to use some of those funds outside of the tourism promotion spectrum. Some of the expenditures that we're looking at are PERS and medical expenses. Anytime that you add personnel, those are just inherent costs that come with it, and the costs of those things that are outside of our control that continue to rise. One of the ways that we do continue to try and manage our PERS liability is the unfunded liability that we continue to make payments toward to help maintain a more reasonable rate. So that way we help the general fund in regards to cost control there. Some of the other things that we have concerns about are unfunded mandates from the state. And so the state might make changes that put the impacts on the local governments, but they don't provide any additional funding to help us meet those requirements. And then just our ongoing investments in priority community needs. We are focusing a lot of resources on social services, so that way all of our citizens can have health and safety lifestyles. So as we move into this current fiscal year budgeting process, we are taking the recent general fund trends that we've spoken about. We're continuing to monitor those. And on average, we continue to see property tax revenues come in about 3 to 4% above the budgeted amount on an annual basis. Currently, the majority of our property taxes get received in the months of November, between October and December. And right now we're approximately 95.9% received. And so we still have another quarter that we will be receiving additional property tax revenues. So we anticipate that trend will continue. Personnel expenditures on average increase about 5 to 7% annually. We often do see savings in the personnel costs from what is budgeted, however, because there's oftentimes where we might have vacancies in positions while somebody retires or leaves the organization and we're going through the recruitment process. There's oftentimes, a couple months lag where the position will remain vacant. So that helps us realize some savings despite the average overall increase in personnel. Materials and service expenditures on average continue to increase 4 to 5% annually. And then over the past 10 years, on average, we do receive about 106% of our budgeted revenues. This excludes the beginning fund balance, but it takes into consideration those things mentioned before, such as the property tax revenues. And then on average, we spend about 92% of what was actually budgeted. And that again goes to those vacancies. It also just goes to our budget policies where staff and departments are informed that if you have the opportunity to realize savings because you ended up not it ended up not costing as much, or the program ended up not needing as much funding, it is the budget policy that those dollars go unspent and you don't just spend them because you have them. So next steps and why we are all here today. As mentioned last week, the board adopted the updated budget policies and your budget committee should have received those. They were sent out on Thursday. If you did not receive them, please reach out to me and I will make sure you get them, along with the budget calendar, which I'll bring up in just a minute as well as a reminder. Another thing that we are doing with our departments that start next week is we are beginning to have those discussions about the needs of the departments. And one of those things that we will be talking about with them, based on both the financial trends and the expenditure trends, is that we do not anticipate this fiscal year adding additional FTE to the general fund. And so having these conversations prior to the departments creating their budgets helps just kind of with better communication with the budget committee, helps with better communication and expectations of the departments. And it makes it a little bit easier for us to live within that side of reasonable expectations that everybody has. So in February, the departments will then begin updating in the budget module, and they'll be completing their current year projections. So as we previously mentioned, the different programs and staffing levels that they have, if they anticipate that because of vacancies, their personnel costs aren't going to come in, or because of programs that ended up not happening or ended up costing a little bit more, helping us have a better idea of what that ending fund balance for the general fund is going to be. And then taking those current year projections, that then helps us build what their budget requests are going to be. And so those are all due mid-February is the current year projections, and then their requested budgets, which will be due at the end of February, will then help us kind of get a better idea of where everybody's at and help us update those forecast budget modules to make sure that we're staying on track and within that 20 to 30% reserve amount. In March, we then go back and we have budget meetings again with all the departments, just to kind of let them know where we're at in regards to all of the requests that came in, and fine tune any additional concerns or questions based on those updated trends and forecasting. April is when we will have the budget document compiled, and April 26th is when we intend to distribute those documents to the budget committee. I'm going to see if I can, because I can't see where anything is, I'm not going to. Can everybody see that calendar?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, great. So this is just a reminder for all of our budget committee members of the upcoming dates that we're going to need for them to be present for you all to be present for. So as I mentioned, April 26th is when we're looking to distribute those budget documents. And then the first budget committee meeting is scheduled to be had on May 3rd. And this will be from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. This is when we will be presenting the budget message on both the countywide and the 4 special districts that we have. This is anticipated to be for 2 hours, and it's just to present the budget message and answer any questions regarding the budget message. And this will be a virtual meeting. And then for the countywide budget, we will then have on May 10th, the budget committee meeting from 5 to 6 p.m. where we'll start with receiving public comment, as well as going through, beginning to go through the budget document itself. And as you can see, May 17th, May 24th, and then the final public hearing on the approved budget to go before the board for adoption will take place on June 14th. Previously, Don mentioned, that we're still going through the recruitment process for a finance director. And so he and I will be having these meetings with the departments, as well as continuing to coordinate our efforts with all of you. And we're also working, as previously mentioned, with Marina and Company to help us with these forecast models, since it is just the Dawn and Monica show. Teresa, if I can ask if you're able to take away my screen sharing capabilities, so that way I'm able to see everybody in case there are questions that I'm happy to answer.
So Monica, can I
Yes.
weigh in?
Yes,
So,
please do.
So just for the benefit of the board and the budget committee, as we've been going through the projection models, currently the county is sitting in a good place with our discretionary reserves and our discretionary revenues and expenditures. That obviously is an ongoing concern given some of the uncertainty that Monica mentioned with some of the revenue sources, and obviously some of the expenditures like with PERS and with medical care. I think, though, that this will be a very conservative budget year. I don't see us adding staff. I see us, kind of reinforcing, more of a fundamental approach to our spending and to our revenues. We, of course, are hopeful that at some point that the legislature will be inspired to help us through the transient lodging tax formula. But, we're not assuming that's going to happen, but that in and of itself would really provide some flexibility to the budget that I think will maintain fundamental services over a longer horizon. So there's still a lot in play, but certainly we have a strong foundation to do the future planning on. I will say that not having a finance director going into the budget is not the optimum situation, but we are fortunate to have Monica who was the finance director before she was the assistant county manager. So that is a huge help. And then, of course, I have that same experience, but in a different organization before I came here. So I think we will get through this. We're working hard to make sure that we can provide good information to the budget committee and the board as we move forward. But I will say it's still kind of a developmental process. We have met also because we've talked many times about performance measurements. And I did want to mention that where we're kind of leading with that right now is we've had conversations with all the department directors, and they are working on annual work plans that really lay out what are they working on in this year, and some performance measurements that will link, all of the services to the outputs, and other measures. This is kind of the first time that we've done it this way, and so it's kind of a work in progress. But there will be more information about what the departments are working on, what their priorities are, and what some of those metrics are as we move forward. So I just want to make sure that everybody knew that we have heard the message on that, and we are working through that to see how we can best do it. Again, we're a little bit behind this year because of the staff vacancies, but it's still something we are working on and something you will see in the budget document this year. And then we're happy to answer any questions that the board or the budget committee might have.
Yeah, thank you, County Manager Boone, and thank you very much, Assistant County Manager Steele. I appreciate how much work this is to pick up in the absence of a finance director, but we're in very good hands with both of your background and experience. So thanks again for the presentation. I see that Commissioner Thompson has her hand raised. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, with deep respect, regard, gratitude for the skill and the hard work of staff, I've kind of started doing the same thing for myself in terms of a work plan, because I'm working with AOC, with the Budget and Finance Committee and with the Membership Committee to look at how the counties as a body impact how the state relates to us in terms of those unfunded mandates, and also in terms of developing partnerships. So I'm going to work with staff to develop something resembling a work plan or a work picture of my work to share with my colleagues to help me do it better, to invite your participation and feedback, but also so that we're all holding ourselves accountable for results, because it's just how we do things in best management practices to be able to plan, to evaluate, and to communicate. So thank you to the work of the Budget Committee as well. I'm really looking forward to our ongoing meetings. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. I'd like to open it up to the members of the Budget Committee as well that are joining us if they have any questions. Please raise your hand if you do. Any questions? All right, well, thank you very much for the presentation, and we'll go ahead and move on to our next item on the agenda. Next item is ordinance 23-01, trucking terminal as a type 2 conditional use in the RCC zone. And that is on page 5 of our agenda. And I believe our planning manager, Julia Decker, is going to be presenting. Is Julia here?
Julia is here.
Hi, Julia.
Hi.
Take it away.
Hello, commissioners. Thank you. I'd like to share my screen, if at all possible. Teresa?
Yes, I just gave capability for that.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, point of order. There's a member of the public here who has a political slogan as the screen view, and I don't think that's appropriate in our meeting. Is that, I don't know whether to ask the chair or county council or whatever, but
yeah, I'll defer to county council. I can't see it, frankly. I haven't seen it, so it must be not on my screen.
yeah, it's on the second.
And it's probably not the preferred thing, but I think it's something that we can take a look at in future meetings to set up a policy for that. but I too can't see it.
Okay, thank you, County Council. And thank you for bringing it to our attention, Commissioner Thompson. Let's go back to the staff report, Julia Decker.
Thank you. Commissioners, back in 2019, before COVID and before the comprehensive plan project really took off, the county received 2 applications, one right after the other, for similar use, and they were for trucking terminals, and both of them on unrelated properties, but quite close to each other in the Miles Crossing area, different ownerships, but one right after the other, and both of them were approved. And after the second one, the planning commissioners looked around at each other and said, if they're so similar, why are we bothering to hear it this way? It's expensive to the applicant. It takes time. It requires multiple hearings, and it seems so similar. So why are we doing it this way? Why doesn't staff just add trucking terminal to the RCC zone? And so they also suggested that we get something back to them within 6 months. Well, then we had COVID and we were working on the comp plan. And so it kind of didn't happen within 6 months, but it didn't completely fall away either. And so we are here now and asking your board to consider whether or not we should pursue this. So we have a definition of a trucking terminal that seems to align with the Planning Commission's intent, and we'll go over that in a moment, but it did come from the Institute of Transportation Engineers from a 2017 publication. The current RCC zone includes uses of buildings and uses of a public works, public service, or public utility nature that may include equipment storage, repair yards, warehouses, or related activities as a type 2 commercial use. And so these trucking terminals that we had applications for were in fact very similar to that, and that was how those were approved. We have approximately 147 acres in Clatsop County in the RCC zone. All of it is in rural communities, and all of it is with a comprehensive plan designation of development. So we have about 8.6 acres of RCC zone in Westport. One of those is a small, just over a quarter-acre parcel that is not contiguous with the rest of the zone in that area. We have Swenson, which has about 20 acres of RCC. We've got Miles Crossing and Jeffers Gardens with the largest concentration. It has 3 distinct segments, but total area is in excess of like 112 acres. And then we have about 5.73 acres of RCC zone in Arch Cape. All of that is contiguous, and about 3/4 of an acre is not yet developed or does not have a vested conditional use permit on it. So within the RCC zone, in all of these communities, what we have, in Arch Cape, we've got hotels and inns, legally existing dwellings, and a conditional use approval for a deli grocery that has had approval for a long time, is vested, has not been completely developed, and there's been some groundwork, but I mean, they have approval, but you know, it's not built. So there's that. In the Miles Crossing and Jeffers Gardens area, we have a lot of different things. We have the 2 truck terminals that were already approved. We have farm and garden supply. We have a landscaping contractor. We have truck and auto parts supplies. We have auto body paint and repair. We've got pub, a deli grocery. We have fabrication and automotive repair. We have log truck storage and dispatch. We have agricultural equipment and repair. We have legally existing dwellings. And we have an auto wrecking yard. That's in the Jeffers Gardens side. So there's a lot going on in Miles Crossing and Jeffers Gardens. In Swenson, we've got a grocery store. We have the Grange. We have a fire station, and we have some legally existing dwellings. You will notice that I did not include Napa. Napa does not have any RCC zoning. It has some RCC LI, which is rural community commercial light industrial, but it does not have any of the just pure RCC, rural community commercial. And then in Westport, again, we have kind of a lot of different things going on. We've got restaurants and diners, a couple of those. We've got a gas station, a deli, a church that took over a former school, and again, a number of legally existing dwellings, and that's in Westport. So those are the things that are going on in the RCC zone at this time. So based on the direction of the Planning Commission and on what we were asking your board is whether or not you would like to continue, have staff continue with maybe doing this addition to the zone, adding a definition of trucking terminal, and doing some renumbering as is shown in attachment B. What I would consider doing right now actually is having you take a look at attachment A. There's trucking terminal, there's your definition, an intermodal truck terminal facility where goods are transferred between trucks and or between trucks or other modes of transportation, including but not limited to railroads and or ports. We had that as broad as we could possibly make it because one does not know what the future may bring. So could be, intermodal could be between trucks and bicycles or submarines or ultralights, whatever, just as wide open as possible. And then we had attachment B, and what I wanted to do here was just show you where it would sort of fit in there. So it would come in as 17 trucking terminal with the ordinance number. This one would be 2301, and then renumbered after it. 17 would become 18, 18 would become 19. So very modest changes in terms of the actual land and water development and use code. But one of the things that your board may wish to consider is what those modest changes might mean in those neighborhoods. So staff has some maps to share with you. And first of all, if we could look, there we go. Taking a look, this is where the RCC zoning is. So we have Westport, this little dot here. We have Swenson right here. We have Miles Crossing, Jeffers Gardens up here. And then down here we have Arch Cape. So we'll start with the east and move west. This is an overview of where the zoning is in Westport. So the bulk of it is here along the highway. And then we have this small section of, let's see. This is just over a quarter of an acre up here. This is actually in Georgia Pacific ownership, surrounded by Teven Brothers Heavy Industrial. And then the rest of this is down here along the highway. So you've got the gas station, the berry patch, just some various uses down here, a row of houses along the highway. This kind of shows you a little bit better the part along the highway. That's about 8 1/3 acres. And then this is the 0.28 of Georgia Pacific zoning. Remember, that's this portion up here. So that's Westport. Here's Swenson. So, and this is the Highway 30 Swenson Market Road intersection. We have here the Country Market. We've got a natural gas distributor here. We have the Grange. Over here across the highway is the fire station. We've got some legally existing dwellings. And so the total on this one, oops, went the wrong way, sorry, about 20 acres, more or less. So there, you can see it a little bit more clearly there. So that's Swenson. Miles Crossing and Jeffers Gardens, again, a little bit more dynamic. We have some of the RCC zoning clear up here. This is just on the south side of the Old Bay Bridge. We have a little portion of it right here. I believe that's where the veterinary clinic is. And then we've got this along the highway, along alternate 101 here. So this is where you've got farm and garden and automotive repair. And over here on the west end, that's where the auto wrecking yard is. The two trucking terminals that we had that your board approved are over in this region over here. And as you can see, we still have residential zoning around it, but this is actually some light industrial zoning as well. So this is a much more mixed neighborhood. So there's 91.75 acres here, another almost 8 acres up here. And then this part right below the Bay Bridge is actually about 12 acres. You've got the tire store, you've got a kind of a small industrial mall, there's a coffee kiosk, all kinds of things going on there. And finally, we have Arch Cape. And so here is this little enclave, I guess, of RCC. And that's your 5.73 acres. So this part right here is the section that has the conditional use permit that's been approved, but not completely fulfilled for the Arch Cape Deli Grocery. We have the Arch Cape Lofts, which is a kind of a micro hotel over here. We have an inn, actually historical inn over on this section. Over here we have an inn, a couple of dwellings. These over here on the northeast side of East Ocean, these are the ones that are not developed. And so you get a better look there. You can kind of tune in and see that. So obviously, these neighborhoods, these RCC zone neighborhoods are very different from each other. Don't know that we would ever have received the same kinds of approvals for terminal trucking facility in the other zones. Don't know that we would not have. So my question for your board, staff would like to know, what is your direction? Would you like to pursue this? And staff is happy to answer any questions if possible.
Okay, thank you very much, Planning Manager Jacker. And I'll open it up to, yep, I see Commissioner Webb has her hand up. So Commissioner Webb.
Yes, I remember the Jeffers Gardens. What's the right word? Approval. And I remember at the time that I was very much in favor of it because because we're a place without an interstate highway, we're a place without trains. And so trucking is just about the only way we have to move products and resources around in Clatsop County. And I felt that the Jeffers Gardens area was very appropriate. And incidentally, those have been developed into what I consider very well-maintained industrial kind of commercial sites. I guess because of the nature of the other RCC zoning, I'm not sure that I would approve truck transfer facilities in those other places, other than maybe Westport and Swenson. The Arch Cape one, we're having so many issues right now in Arch Cape with development going on, and it does have a little bit more commercial, a little bit more residential. So I'm not sure I would support the Arch Cape issue, but if you put, it seems to me there's a LUBA ruling from 30 years ago that if you allow something in one zone, you have to allow, if it's a similar zone, you have to always allow the same thing. Can somebody in planning help me out with that?
Commissioner Webb, you are correct. If your board approves this in the RCC zone, then anything with the RCC zone designation is going to have the same use. So you have the possibility of saying, well, maybe we need a special AC RCC zone. or
Mhm.
something. But maybe that's not the appropriate thing to do at this time.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Webb. You raised some good points. Commissioner Toyoka.
Thank you very much. I said one hopefully simple question, since has the current planning commission reviewed this, since it's been over 3 years since that came up from them? Has the current planning commission reviewed it and had any other recommendations or any other, adapted to the current landscape of what's going on in Clatsop County?
Yes, Commissioner Toyoka, actually the Planning Commission took a look at this on the 10th and discussed some similar types of things. And they went ahead and recommended it on to you to continue the discussion and consider the approval.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Toyoka. Commissioner Bangs.
I would support this moving forward. We've set a precedence for allowing developments like this in this particular zone, the RCC zone areas. And from what I gather, it would decrease development costs or permit costs. Is that correct?
Yes, Commissioner Bangs, it would probably streamline things for people. They wouldn't have to go through the similar use process, which takes longer. And frankly, in both instances previously, the owners ended up needing to use a consultant to assist them. So of course, there's the added expense of that. There's multiple hearings. If this is a type 2 use in the RCC zone, then that's a director's decision. And so we just go through with the regular conditional use process. They can be done in 8 weeks. And again, because it's a type 2 use, there's public notice. There's the ability for the neighbors to respond, to apply conditions of approval. I mean, it's not just carte blanche or anything like that. There is review, but it does streamline it tremendously.
I guess just a follow-up comment is that is something that I know that both Commissioner Toyoka and I have been requesting, is to potentially streamline permitting processes in order to encourage development and economic growth, especially when we're looking down the barrel of losing a lot of funding in our community with the HCP. So I would end up supporting anything we can to reduce costs on anybody willing to develop business.
Thank you, Commissioner Bangs. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I am for expanding this. I do not want to see another special Arch Cape conditional segment of our county ordinances. I appreciate Commissioner Webb's point that we have only trucking. In this part of the world, in my neighborhood, these businesses are directly contiguous to the 1 lane north and 1 lane south. That's our only connection to the world, unless we have barges during some kind of catastrophic event that come ashore in Arch Cape. So I'm for this. I'm for the streamlining. I'm for the acknowledgement that every area in the county needs to have access to supplies coming in and other things going out. So yes, please proceed.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. I would echo Commissioner Thompson's comments as well, and Commissioner Bangs and Commissioner Toyoka. I thought that that this was a good discussion. I do think we need to move forward on this. Any other further comments from the commission? Okay. Planning Manager Decker, thank you so much for the report, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, commissioners. Thank you very much.
Next is the committee and liaison appointments on page 26 of the agenda. And on page 26, I'll go ahead and turn it over to our county manager, Don Boone.
Sure. Chair Cuerlo, members of the board, as you are aware, this is a once every 2-year process to look at the liaison responsibilities of the board of commissioners. In the packet, there is a matrix with a list of all of the current assignments. And so something that that we have discussed at various times is the rotation of the committee assignments. And so this is really just a conversation for the board, and obviously it's a board-led process. So after I say my few words here, I will be absorbed into the background. But I think that we had sent out a survey, staff sent out a survey just to help your board see what some of the interests of the other board members are. From my experience, rotating assignments is good for a board and it's good for a county. But that ultimately is up to your board and to the board chair about how those assignments are actually identified. So I'm here to support in any way, but I'll give it back to Chair Cuellar.
Yeah, thank you, County Manager, for leading us off. And I agree. And I have reached out to all of the commissioners and kind of initiated the discussion and kind of the thought process of maybe experiencing something else as a liaison assignment. Maybe there's another area of interest that commissioners might want an opportunity to explore and serve in a different capacity. I'm all for that. And I think that, we're not going to make any decisions today. This is a discussion. It'll be brought back at our next meeting, and then I will have the opportunity as the chair to make those assignments. But, from my own perspective, I know I don't have a great deal of capacity. I have a full-time job. I know that some of the others on this commission have full-time jobs, and then some of us have more capacity. So I think we need to kind of think about that, what our level of commitment is to be, in attendance at the committee meetings. And then also, I think, give others an opportunity to serve in a different capacity. I know for one, just speaking for myself, I love the CREST board and what they do. I mean, it's fascinating. Every meeting about the projects and restoration projects they're doing up and down the Columbia River and across the river, because this is a council of governments in Waco, and every city in Clatsop County is represented on that as well. And I think it's fascinating to hear about all they're doing. But I'd be willing to give someone else an opportunity to be a part of that liaison assignment and learn more about what they're doing and report out to the group, probably better than I have in the past, about what all they're doing. And I think hand in hand with that goes the Lower Columbia Solutions Group. I know they have a big meeting at the end of the month on the 30th. It's going to be their annual meeting for several hours during the day. That's something that I can't attend because I think it starts at 9 and it ends about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. But that really is Denise Loftman and the Columbia River Estuary Study Task Force going over their priorities and their projects. And I think that would be something that if you're going to be serving on the CREST board, that you should be at that meeting as well and be a part of the Lower Columbia Solutions Group. So I'm just kind of throwing that out there as if someone has an interest, that's something that someone might want to switch and with me and take over. And I'll leave it to the rest of the group as well. But I think it's healthy. I think it's good for us to take a different look at what these assignments are and give everyone an opportunity to serve in a different capacity if they so choose. So with that, I will go ahead and leave it open for discussion for my fellow commissioners. I see Commissioner Toyoka and then Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Toyoka.
Thank you. Just in terms of assignments, I will leave it to you as a chair to wherever the best needs of the county, I will fit in. I have to self-admit that on the Cedar liaison, I was terrible this past year. Business conflicts, the meeting dates just didn't work out, but I think those conflicts have gone away. Projects have ended, so I don't have that conflict going into the new year. So yeah, at your discretion, sir, and I will do whatever you need for the best of the county. I would prefer to stay on Public Safety Coordinating Council. That is interest, and I think I can provide something there, but other than that, it's up to your discretion.
Thank you, Commissioner Toyoka. I did hear some music there in the background, so I think we might have someone that's not muted. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, sir. I'd echo Commissioner Toyoka's comments. It's the chair's prerogative. I appreciate that we're discussing it. I would mention to you that I need to update with the county clerk. As of last week, I am now chair of Colpack and Northwest Act. And as of the week before that, I am co-chair of AOC's membership committee with a second vice president and vice chair of AOC's Budget and Finance Committee with the treasurer, and I'm one of the delegates to the Local Government Advisory Committee, which is a half a dozen county commissioners from all over Oregon working with the Oregon Health Authority and the Department of Human Services around the relationship of the counties with the state, especially as regards mental health, public health kind of issues. So have fun, do good. We'll follow your lead, sir. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Banks.
I just wanted to reiterate, I'm glad that we're having this conversation. I was willing to pick up Cedar if need be, but it sounds like John has resolved any conflicts that he may have. I feel like moving forward, I would really love to keep the FTLAC and those types, like my 4-H extension and my fair board. I'm really vested into those positions. I do have a conflict that regularly arises for my Soil and Water Conservation District Liaison appointment. I can make it work, but it's difficult to do 2 Wednesdays a month here and then an additional Wednesday there because I'm taking it away from my students. And I'm not comfortable continuing to do that. And so that one I'm willing to parcel off if somebody is available to take that up. And then the other liaison position that I have no problem serving on, but if somebody feels interest, it's the Northwest Senior and Disability Services. So yeah, feel free to do with what you may, Chair, regarding our liaisons. But I'm really very invested into the natural resources one, and I truly wish I could be more consistent for our Soil and Water Conservation District. Missy is an amazing friend of mine, and so part of it is I wish I could show up more consistently for her and her group. So anyhow, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Banks. Commissioner Webb?
Yeah, I really support the county manager's urging of us to trade around. But I also find that with some of our assignments, that's very, very doable because it doesn't take an enormous amount of background or learning. But there are other assignments that really require a great deal of learning to be effective at. I guess I feel that way about the NOHA board. I've been with it through mostly thin, and was very instrumental in the hiring of our new director. And my support of her has been very important. And the processes involved in this kind of an assignment, understanding investment tax credits and local zoning and property maintenance, et cetera. I feel I'm sort of I'm not at the peak of my knowledge, but I certainly am a lot smarter about this than I was 4 years ago. And so I would like to continue because I think that I'm able to contribute more as time goes on. Otherwise, I would be happy to pick up some of the things that are particularly scheduling issues for other commissioners who have full-time jobs. I'd be happy to do the senior disabilities group or CEDAR. I have a very strong background in economic development, so I'd be happy to do that. And anything else that anybody might want. One of the issues that I find is the ability, especially with our multi-county organizations, now that we're no longer holding only virtual meetings. I do find it useful to be able to travel to other communities and look at how they address certain issues. On the workforce board, that's particularly strong. I get to see other community colleges and other workforce programs that I really like doing. So I guess that's where I am, but thanks for all the good thoughts about it.
Thank you, Commissioner Webb, and appreciate the feedback from the commission. And I'll take all of this under advisement. I will be making the assignments. I think we're doing it at the next meeting, correct, County Manager? Okay. But I will kind of prep people. I do intend to make some changes, so be prepared, I guess, for that. But yeah, I do appreciate everybody's feedback, and I know that that we will be a strong board, and I think we'll be matched up with good assignments going forward in 2023. So thanks again for the discussion and the feedback. We'll move on to the short-term rental moratorium. And that is on page 31 of our agenda. And I know that we have County Council here, and I'll turn it maybe to County Manager Don Boone to begin with. County Manager.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Coelho, members of the board. At a previous board meeting, your board approved an extension to the moratorium. And at the time, your board directed staff to come back with some additional staff work regarding whether or not that there was some other viable options with the extension of the moratorium. It was really whether or not the moratorium could be sunset, and then what the implications of that might be. And so as a result, staff, County Council, community development staff, myself have been in conversations about what that might look like. As part of that, Anthony, our County Council, has been talking to other resources, other attorneys, other perspectives on some of the details of the legal side. And so I will defer to Anthony to give a little bit of an overview of that, because I think that will inform additional conversation with the board. So.
All right. Thank you, Don. So just a little background on, leading up to where we are now. The moratorium was first passed by the board back in August 25th of 2021. It's been extended 4 times since then, and is currently in effect through June 22nd, 2023. As we were going through this process, there's a lot of complicated law and how things interact with each other. And one of the assumptions that the county has made up till now is that the ordinance 22-05, which was passed by the board last June, which allowed short-term rentals to be permitted throughout the county, was still in effect. As you guys know, shortly after that was passed by the board, several members of the community petitioned to have it repealed. And in September, they were able to gather enough signatures in order to place it on the May ballot. So coming up in this next May election, there'll be a vote by the public. They have the option of the referendum and repealing the ordinance or allowing it to continue. Back in December, I completed a legal memo for the board. One of the concerns was these vacation rentals that have been already permitted would be able to renew their permits during the moratorium. I gave my legal opinion that they could, but that was based on this assumption that that ordinance that you passed back in June 22-05 would still be in effect. As Don mentioned, we researched it, we talked to outside counsel, and the county's of the legal opinion now that ordinance is basically placed on hold until the May election when it's decided by the voters. This in effect puts the county in a legal situation where we were before that ordinance passed, meaning that the county code has not been amended to allow vacation rentals to be used or to be permitted throughout the county. So the kind of the effect of that, if the county were to, if the Board of Commissioners were to remove the moratorium, it wouldn't allow new vacation rentals to be permitted throughout the county. It would be restricted to the Arch Cape area as required by the code prior to ordinance 22-05. And as we look through this, one of the kind of the sticky, tough situation is that there was vacation rentals that had been permitted throughout the county outside of Arch Cape in air, starting back in about 2018. Since they've been permitted, we've allowed them to operate. With this new knowledge that ordinance 22-05 is no longer in effect until the election, the county is left with the difficult situation. What do we do with these renewals? And of course, on the county side, if we do believe that they are unlawful, it could put us in legal jeopardy to go forward and renew them. But on the other side, we have these permit holders who, for some of them, for the last 5 years, have been operating these short-term rentals legally, and they have an ongoing business. And if we were to deny their permits today, they effectively have to cease operation immediately. And this would cause, kind of undue hardship. And I think the county recognizes that we are, part of the reason that there's this problem by issuing those permits in air. So in discussion with outside counsel, with the county manager and the planning department, we feel that the best solution would be to offer an administrative extension to any of these short-term rentals that are going to be expiring between the first of the year and the May election. And it would be our recommendation that we just automatically extend them out through August 1st. This would allow the election to take place and would allow, there to be some kind of certainty to know, what the situation would be at that point. If the ordinances, the referendum fails, the ordinance will go into effect and there really will be no legal issue. We can renew the permits immediately. If the moratorium passes, then we're going to have to start looking maybe at other solutions. And we really won't be able to do anything with those permits as far as renewals until there's a new ordinance or the board decides how they want to move forward. Any questions so far or any comments for me?
Right. I see Commissioner Banks. Commissioner Banks.
How does the Lincoln County LUBA resolution, I guess, weigh into this conversation? Or will that weigh in post referendum vote in May?
So yeah, it's my understanding that there is some differences between the LUBA decision in Lincoln County. One of the major ones is that in Lincoln County, it was the permits when they were issued were lawful. It was in line with the county code. As they tried to phase them out, then that's when they became the issue and they were able to continue the use of the short-term rentals as unconforming use. And Gail can chime in if I'm getting off topic or off here. The difference here in Clatsop County is when we permitted those short-term rentals outside of Arch Cape, is that they were unlawful. It was a mistake on the county, so they've never been a legal use. And so, talking with outside land use counsel, it would be his understanding that we could either revoke those permits or let them expire, and that they wouldn't be able to continue pending a new ordinance. Excuse me, or if the referendum fails and ordinance 22-05 goes into effect.
Commissioner Banks.
So if the ordinance fails in May, what is our options moving forward? Are we able to just reissue it and allow our short-term rentals that are currently in operation to continue to operate? Or are we how far are we circling back our wagons, I guess, is my next question.
Yeah, so if the referendum passes, the ordinance would basically be repealed and not go into effect. And that's really the only action of that referendum. It would be the board's prerogative. They could literally pass the same ordinance, or they could, make alters and pass a new ordinance addressing the problem. But yeah, there'd be nothing banning the board from taking future action, since the referendum is just based on ordinance 22-05. If there was an initiative, that would be a different story, but the referendum is very specific to the ordinance.
Thank you, County Council. Commissioner Thompson.
Okay, so evolving case law, are we having fun now? You know, I really appreciate that we are hanging in there with each other. I will say that long before I came to Clatsop County to live, there was, in fact, short-term renting going on. It was advertised through newspapers, through word of mouth, through whatever. So it was going on. When I came to live in Clatsop County in 1999, part-time and then full-time in 2004-05, what I saw was that the internet had changed the nature of short-term renting. So I talked about it as a planning commissioner in Clatsop County. I talked about it as a county commissioner in Clatsop County. But in all of those years, since probably the beginning of people here, there has been short-term renting. So when I hear you say, oh, it was illegal, I think there was a lot of law breaking going on. I know that in 2015, when I started talking about it, and we worked as a board on it in 16 and 17, we finally put out something that attempted to codify and to regulate something that had been going on forever. Because whenever I asked the county, from the time I moved here until we did something about it, the answer always was, it is unregulated everywhere in Clatsop County except Arch Cape. So everybody knew it was happening. Why? Help me reconcile my lived experience with law.
Right, I think, if you say it's illegal, it makes it sound like it's something, I think the correct term is, it was against the county code, which is technically illegal, but it is something that was, kind of allowed to happen. And as I mentioned, from 2018 until recently, the county, or until the moratorium, I guess, the county was issuing permits outside of Arch Cape in air. And I believe, I wasn't here, but when ordinance 22-05 was, discussed and passed, I think that was a way to kind of close that loophole. And it would make, all these short-term vacation rentals that have been operating outside of Arch Cape, legal and conforming. And so it is, it's a complex situation with a lot of history and trying to, sync that with the law. And like I said, my understanding is that's what we were trying to do with that ordinance 22-05. And of course, if it's repealed, I think it's something that the board would need to look at, how they want to address moving forward.
Thank you, County Council. Commissioner Banks.
So I have a question. I mean, I will be quite frank that this entire situation and whatnot has been really frustrating, because I feel like I'm trying to solve something that started long before I was here. But from what I'm gathering is, if an activity is not listed in a use activity is not listed in our county code, then that would then deem it something that cannot occur. And so, I mean, I'm just going to be completely funny about this. If I wanted to open a turtle ranch in my house or whatever, because turtle ranching is not listed, I would not be able to be a turtle rancher. Is that what we're, and I know I'm being overly simplistic with this, but is that basically what we're saying, is because short-term rental was not listed in the county code as a use, then these folks are not able to be short-term, they're not able to have short-term rentals. Is that what I'm gathering? even though I'm sure there's a plethora of things that aren't listed in our county code that, I mean, I feel like we're chasing our tail for the next, 2 decades if we keep trying to list everything in our county code that, folks are allowed to do on their property. So sorry.
Thank you, Commissioner Banks. Who wants to?
I'd like to defer that over to Gail. Gail, do you
Yeah, I
mind
see that
weighing in
Gail
on that?
Hendrickson, our Community Development Director, popped on there, so we'll let Gail tackle that.
Hi. Yeah, good morning, Board and Commissioners. Yeah, so you're correct, Commissioner Banks, that typically if something is not called out explicitly in our zoning code, it's not allowed or permitted. In the case of your turtle ranch, there may be ways to get you around that and be able to get your turtle ranch licensed, depending on how it operates. But in this particular case, with short-term rentals, we had actually called out short-term rentals as a use in the Arch Cape zone beginning in 2003. And so that set the precedent that everything that followed after that should have followed that same path. And so in 2018, when that Ordinance 1801 got adopted, that established operating standards for short-term rentals everywhere else outside of Arch Cape, we should have gone back at that time and updated the zoning code as well. And that wasn't done for a variety of reasons. That was a decision that was made before I actually started here as well. I came in just in time for second reading on the ordinance. So yeah, it was something that was done that way. We tried to fix it with Ordinance 2205, but basically you're correct. If it's not listed, we can't permit it.
Thank you, Community Development Director. Did you have a follow-up, Commissioner Banks?
Yeah, so just as a follow-up, is there a methodology where they can do a conditional use permit?
So there may be ways, for example, if it was a place where the owner was living full-time, there might be a possibility to do it as a homestay, home occupation type of scenario, which was probably how we would get your turtle ranch going. But other than that, it would depend on each zone. We'd have to look at it, but home occupation, which requires the owner to live there and be there full-time, would be the way. And we have done one of those, I think, down on Highway 53. So.
Any other questions at this point? Commissioner Thompson.
Well, thank you, sir. I want to express my gratitude to my colleagues on the commission, to the staff, and to neighbors of every persuasion and point of view for the willingness to engage in this complicated, consequential discussion. What I come down to time after time, it all depends on relationship. Politics depends on our relationships. Neighborhoods depend on our relationship. Everything we do depends on our relationship with each other. So I would, I don't know if plead is the proper word, but certainly request strongly with an open and loving heart that we all proceed on the basis that we want to maintain positive, constructive, respectful relationships with one another. And to the extent that we can tailor our speech and our actions to support positive, constructive relationships with each other, I want us to go forward with that. So thanks to County Council. It's never easy to come on and say, oh, whoops, oh, whoops, awkward terms. So welcome to Clatsop County. We're honored and lucky to have you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I agree, Commissioner Thompson. Thanks again for saying that. And County Council, we appreciate your due diligence and research on this item to get us to this point. If we have any other, do we have any other comments from the commission? And if not, we'll go ahead. Oh, Commissioner Banks.
No, I appreciate the August extension. I think that that's a great methodology to move forward in dealing with our current short-term rental permits. I just sure hate to see folks lose their livelihood while this mess is being sorted out. So anyhow, I'm grateful for everything county council has done, but also our county manager and assistant county manager and Gail Henderson. Just thank you for coming up with an idea in order to save these folks' livelihood in the interim.
Agreed. Well put, Commissioner Banks. Commissioner Thompson.
Well, and how could I forget my Arch Cape constituent who has been regularly emailing me, at least one and maybe two or three, saying, can you lift it in Arch Cape? So I have to ask, can we lift it in Arch Cape, please? Because I do have folks there who've had family home, who thought they were going to be able to come back, who've sunk money into it, who are losing money. Director Hendrickson, what's the consequence if we lift the moratorium in Arch Cape where these permits are legal?
So during the moratorium for Arch Cape, permits could still be renewed, as I understand it. And again, county council can jump in if I'm speaking out of turn. And then you would need to lift the moratorium for the Arch Cape zone in order to issue brand new permits for properties that have never been licensed. But they are permitted in our code now. There has been no challenge to the Arch Cape zone ordinance, and so that remains in effect.
I would like to ask my colleagues to consider if we could lift the moratorium for Arch Cape, because I would like to stop punishing those people where it is legal. We're agreed on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Banks.
Just to circle back, is there anything wrong with just lifting the moratorium across the board, since we already are aware that we can't issue new permits anywhere else other than Arch Cape? And so if we could just do across the board, is that, rather than just identifying it as like one small, area, just doing the thing. I'm sorry, my technical terminology is a little short today.
No. And I would agree with that. I think that, if you lifted the whole moratorium, it would have the effect of allowing them in Arch Cape, and we still, as the county, would not be able to, issue anywhere else. So that would really be the only effect of lifting the moratorium, would be become allowable for new permits to be issued there in the Arch Cape area.
Okay. Interesting. I hadn't thought of that. Any other comments? How do people feel about that?
I say let's lift it.
Concur.
See Commissioner Toyoka. See Commissioner Thompson nodding. Commissioner Webb. Commissioner Webb, you're muted still.
I'm a little uncomfortable with the pending legal issues about the vote. I guess to me, if we lifted the moratorium right now, then I think we'd have a public relations issue. Because then if anybody outside of Arch Cape went to the planning department and asked for a license, a permit, then the planning department would say, well, no, because it's not allowed where you live. I just wonder from a public relations I don't know, PJ's on the line, I know. How would the public interpret our doing something like that? I think it would be very confusing for people, because we would be admitting that we have been giving these permits illegally for all of these years. Would we be subject to, I don't know, someone suing us for having done that? I think that lifting the moratorium it would be very, very confusing right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Webb. Any response from staff on that? I see. Gail
Okay,
Henriksen,
I will,
Community Development Director.
I'll defer to Public Affairs. Thank you.
Chair Quaylen, members of the commission. Yeah, I need to think that over and I need to get back with you on that. And I will do so.
Okay, good.
Okay, thank you, PJ. Community Development Director, did you have anything that you wanted to add at this time?
Yeah, I think the only thing that I would add is that because the county has so many different zones and because people may live next to property that zone something different from them, we face this situation on a daily basis where you may come in and say, I want to do my turtle ranch. And I look at your zoning and I say, well, no, sorry, you're not zoned for turtle ranching. And you say to me, well, why does Commissioner Bangs get to have a turtle ranch? And I say, well, Commissioner Bangs' property is zoned something completely different from yours. So it's a situation that planning staff and, everywhere across the country and the world deals with on a daily basis. I think that there has been a lot of publicity about the process that we've been going through with short-term rentals. And so I think there is some level of understanding amongst short-term rental owners and people who are looking to apply. But that's just my take from a planning perspective. So.
Thank you, Community Development Director. Commissioner Thompson, then Commissioner Banks. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, sir. Well, I appreciate the consideration given to the public image of the county, but I'd rather abide in the law. I would rather abide in protecting people's legitimate access to livelihood and exercise of their property rights than a perceived embarrassment for something that in good faith, with the best intentions and our best efforts at the time, we acted. So look, now we're revisiting. Oh, we have new information. We've learned, we're improving. And if people want to have a problem with that, as the planning director points out, the community development director, points out, if you really want to have people in consternation, serve on the BOPTA, the Board of Property Tax Appeals, because then you'll really get that. But I'm comfortable going ahead. Thanks for your concerns.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Banks.
My parents told me that the best way to highlight whether or not a rule is a good or a bad rule is to fully enact the rule to the letter of the rule. And I feel like good or bad, ill or great, lifting the moratorium and allowing our county to move forward with the rule that we have set forward will highlight whether or not that rule was a good or a bad rule. Also will highlight maybe the equity concern where one community is elevated to a standard that is allowable, but the rest of our communities are not. And so I feel like let's lift the moratorium. I mean, this is where we're at. This is how the rule is written. And I agree with Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, Commissioner Banks. Any other discussion? Well, this has been a good one. I appreciate the comments from all of my colleagues. And I appreciate Commissioner Webb's thinking about how this perception is with us lifting the moratorium. I think in light of the comments from our community development director, I feel comfortable lifting the moratorium countywide. So I think we can maybe put that to a future meeting and see if we can make that happen. It's going to be decided at a vote in May anyway. So let's go ahead and remove anything out of it at this point. Sound good? Okay. Any other comments from staff or commission on this? That's the last item on our agenda today. So we did move briskly through everything. Appreciate everybody doing that. And we'll go ahead and adjourn.
County manager? County manager.
Oh yeah. Sorry, county manager update. Gee whiz. Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson, for remembering that for me.
Thank you,
I
Commissioner
apologize.
Thompson.
I apologize. I was off the call for a little bit. I had a technical malfunction and wasn't able to follow the entire conversation, but I know staff will update me. So just a real quick update. There's a lot going on right now. Part of the busyness is certainly related to some of the vacancies that we have with our department directors. And at this point, we still have vacancies. There's still a lot of extra duty assignments as we work through that. I am hopeful, though, that we can hopefully hire some folks and the right folks so that we can get these critical positions filled. There's also a lot of training, and as I've mentioned to your board, going on too, and that's certainly taking time. It's time well spent, and I'm very gratified that we're doing it. And I'm enjoying working with the sheriff on the leadership training that I've talked about before. So on top of that, there's just a lot going on within the organization, and so all the external challenges, because we're going to be talking about strategic planning coming up, and obviously that's an important discussion. We're still working on the broadband out in the Jewel area. We have a meeting coming up with the contractor trying to forge a path forward on that. I did talk to Charles Deister, who I think many of you have spoken to at various times. He's the government relations manager from Charter Communications, and they have received federal money to improve broadband along the Highway 30 corridor from the county line west. And so there are a lot of construction projects that are current and some future, but that all of that work should be wrapping up in the next year and a half or so. And so there's a lot of good work that is going on. Certainly the county is not the only one doing it. We're doing it in partnership with a lot of other folks. And so, we are continuing to work with our city partners on a lot of different issues, some related to affordable housing and homelessness, some related to other projects, including emergency management. And so, I think we're making a lot of strides on a lot of different levels. But circling back to my original, is filling these vacancies is going to go a long way for us to be able to continue to move everything forward. So I just want to say thanks to your board for your support as we do this. This is definitely a team sport, and I'm gratified for the team that we have. So thank you.
Thank you, County Manager. I see that Commissioner Bangs has her hand up. Commissioner Bangs.
I just had a question. Well, a word of appreciation. I do appreciate how hard our staff is working right now. I know that you're working above and beyond your job descriptions currently, and it's much appreciated. And then the second question was, as I was just wondering if PJ could do a press release regarding Charter and their federal funding and Highway 30.
Chair Quayla, Commissioner Banks. What I will do is I will reach out to Charles Deister again, and maybe we can coordinate with them on a joint release, just so the public knows what is happening here. Yeah.
It would be much appreciated, so that there's not, as you know, with small communities, there's always rumors, and those rumors are currently running really rampant right now. So
yes, I will contact Charles and see if we can forge a path.
Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate everybody joining us today. With no other items on our agenda, we'll go ahead and adjourn. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. Take care.